Another question I've got here is, how do I stick to a budget when I have fluctuating income? Some good steps and a great process for doing that. The first thing you're going to need to do is track your income and expenses. If it's irregular, you need to understand what are the highs and what are the lows, not only for your income, but for your expenses as well. There are a lot of people who have the fluctuating incomes. If you're a gig worker, if you're self-employed, if you live in a tourist town, to where, hey, maybe during the summer you make massive amounts of tips, doing deliveries, or because your store gets hit by all the tourists, and then during the winter it's bare bones. So you've got to understand those highs and lows. And then for your expenses, maybe you live somewhere where, hey, your power bill during the summer is huge because you're running the AC, or it's huge in the winter because you're running the heat. Other things, gas does the same thing. Maybe during the peak times, you're running a lot of gas through the car, all of that. So you've got to understand those highs and lows and then figure out an average of those. Estimating your lowest monthly income will give you a baseline of where your budget should sit. So that gives you the baseline, and that's your standard monthly budget, is wherever your lowest income is. Then you start by giving yourself a salary. You started out with the monthly, you pay yourself this salary for that lowest month, even when you got a high month, so that you can build up that emergency fund or build up a sinking fund, an account that holds the excess money from your high times, so that you can save that and then pay some of that out during the low times the next time. So once you do have that saved up, then you can work on, instead of having your lowest monthly income, you can have an average monthly income, and then calculate that going out so that you've got a little bit more flex in the lower months, and then you put a little bit more into savings during the higher months. But budgeting is the key when you've got an income that doesn't have steady, that it's fluctuating. Keeping to your budget will help you survive those highs and lows. And then when you're looking at your budgeting, what is it that you prioritize when you budget? The four corners of your budget, your existence, it should be your housing, your food, utilities, and your transportation. Those things, those are the four corners. Now, your roof, having your housing, if you own, you're going to have the biggest amount of risk. So you need to look at, or when you own, you may not have a mortgage. So if you own your place outright, you still got to deal with insurance, taxes, and possibly HOA payments. So those are still what you're going to consider as the part of your baseline budget. If you do have a mortgage, your taxes and insurance may be included in that insurance or that mortgage payment. So additionally, you've got to make sure you watch your HOA, and also some basic maintenance funds for your house, whether you own it outright or if you've got a mortgage, because things will happen. If you rent, then things like the insurance and the taxes, they're paid by your landlord, so you don't have to worry about that. You just got the rent payment. And sometimes your rent can include some of your utilities, so that's a bonus. The next thing that you consider in your budget, because, hey, you're dry, you're inside, you're not sleeping on the street. That's the priority. Next thing in your budget to consider is food. Without food in your belly, it's a massive stressor. And if you can live indoors and eat 365 days a year, that's always a good thing. That's what my dad always said. He said, I'll take whatever as long as I can live indoors and eat 365 days a year. So your food, it shouldn't include dining out. It shouldn't include those luxuries. It should include just what you need to get by. Now, this is just the baseline for your budget. The first things that you make sure are covered in your budget. Now, if you don't have any sort of emergency or anything like that, then you can include larger amounts for luxury food, larger amounts for dining out, that sort of thing. Right now, we're just talking about the baseline priorities. Okay. Next, utilities. And I consider them in this order. Okay, first of all, water. Water sustains life. Water will help you keep clean. Even if you don't have power to warm it, it'll keep you hydrated and it'll keep you clean. Next, power, so that you can be warm and so that your water can be warm, so that you can cook your food. It's always a good thing. Heat on during the winter, cool on during the summer. Then gas. Gas sometimes will heat your house. Sometimes you have gas water or gas cooking, that sort of thing. So that falls next in priorities. Then telephone, so that you can communicate. That includes cell phones. When I was hard up, now I remember back before cell phones, when you just had the landlines. But telephones you can get if you're worried about a base budget, you can get basic cell phone service. I know Ryan Reynolds out there with his Cricket phones are inexpensive. So you can downgrade your plan. You can do all of that if you have to. But that's what you should consider as part of your base budget. All of your expansions, upgrades, that sort of thing, that comes as extras later in your budget. And then finally, trash. Trash payments. Sometimes trash is taken care of in your taxes. Sometimes it's taken care of in your mortgage. Other times it's a separate payment that you do monthly. However that works out. Trash collection, I think, comes as the last element of your baseline budget, because it's part of staying clean and healthy. The next thing in your four corners is transportation. If you own a car, and if you own a car, then I consider things in this order, at least for me. Your loan payment, because even if you can't drive the car, you've got it through the tough times. And then when they're not tough anymore, then you can get going again. So the loan payment, then insurance, then gas. Insurance before gas, because you should not be driving if it's not legal to drive it. And all states require insurance. It's the law. So best to follow the law and not get a ticket and dig yourself deeper in the hole. So then after gas, some basic maintenance. You've got to keep your car on the road. So oil changes, wipers, things like that to keep the car running smoothly. Then after you've got the four corners of your budget, I also consider clothing to be a priority item. There are some jobs that, because your clothing is going to be dependent on what your job is. Some jobs have uniforms that are covered by work, and some of them you have to pay for. Some of them just require a certain type of dress, but you got to be dressed to go out in public. So you can get by on just a small amount of clothing. You don't need to go extravagant, and used clothing can get you a long way. I know we still shop. I got 3 kids to clothe, so we still shop at Goodwill. There's lots of good stuff there. There's a lot of other consignment stores, retro shops, things like that you can get good deals on high quality clothing and still look good. So those are the things that I know when I was just getting out of college, was unemployed, trying to figure out how to get by. Those are the things we considered when we were working, just getting from month to month. So I want to thank you for joining me here tonight, and we'll see you next time.